Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, sports fans, and welcome to another edition of Yesterday's Sports on the Sports History Network. Today, we're going to talk a little boxing. Muhammad Ali and Larry Holmes called him the hardest puncher they ever faced. Harder than Joe Frazier, George Foreman, and Mike Tyson. Randall Tex Cobb said, "He hit so hard you felt it in your ankles." The man they were talking about was Earnie Shavers. Once when George Foreman was asked who the hardest punchers he ever faced were, George responded, Gerry Cooney, Lyle, Cleveland Williams. When asked why Earnie Shavers wasn't on that list, George responded, "I never fought Shavers. Thank goodness." Actor Sylvester Stallone once got a taste of the punching power of Shavers when he invited Shavers to audition for the role of Clubber Lang. While Stallone was sparring with Shavers, Earnie, not wanting to hurt him, was hitting Stallone with soft jabs. After a few minutes, Stallone said, "Show me something real, Earnie." So, Shavers let him have it, punching him once near the liver. Stallone later said, "Earnie nearly killed me. I went straight to the men's room and threw up." Raised in Alabama, one of 10 children, Shavers built his muscular physique and formidable strength through strenuous labor on the farm. His family eventually moved to Ohio, where he became a stellar athlete in high school. But Earnie didn't start boxing until he was 22. After winning the Amateur Athletic Union heavyweight title, Shavers turned pro in 1969, but had to work other jobs, including one at a General Motors plant in Ohio, to make money, which affected his training. Earnie's career didn't start as he would have liked, losing 2 of his first 14 fights. But he then won 27 in a row, all by knockout. His 2 most notable victories during that stretch were a third-round knockout of Jimmy Young and a first-round knockout of Jimmy Ellis. With a 45-2 record, Shavers was moving up in the rankings. Ernie's next opponent was the always dangerous Gerry Cooney. Whoever won this fight might be in line to get a title shot. It didn't go well for Shavers as he got knocked out in the first round. Not one to make excuses, Earnie said, "Gerry caught me with a hard punch. He's a great fighter." 5 months later, he bounced back with a first-round knockout over Roy Wallace. 6 months later, he lost a unanimous decision to Bob Stallings, a non-ranked fighter. The Stallings fight was supposed to be a tune-up for his rematch with Jimmy Young only 22 days later. With his confidence shaken, Shavers fought to a draw with Young and then won his next 3 fights by knockout. If he could win his next fight against Lyle, he would again be considered a top contender. Lyle was already a top contender with a 33-1 record and had just gone 11 rounds with heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali before being stopped on a TKO. Shavers knocked Lyle down in the second round, but Lyle got up just as the round ended. Shavers had Lyle in trouble again in the third round, but couldn't finish him off, and Lyle came back towards the end of the round to land some big blows of his own. In the fourth round, Shavers again had Lyle pinned in the corner, but again Lyle withstood the punishment and even landed some good punches himself. The two fighters traded punches in the fifth round, with Lyle getting the better of the exchanges. Sensing that Shavers was running out of gas, Lyle came out swinging in the sixth round and knocked Shavers down for the count. But Shavers came back to win his next three fights before taking on the 6'5", 240-pound Roy Tiger Williams. Williams was a highly regarded prospect and had been a sparring partner for Muhammad Ali until he got fired for a dispute over his pay. Williams had a reputation for having a nasty disposition. The fight was scheduled for 10 rounds and was a brutal back-and-forth battle. By the start of the final round, the 32-year-old Shavers appeared to have nothing left. Williams rocked him with several hard shots to the head, and it looked like the referee was about to stop it. But he gave Earnie the go-ahead, and Shavers reached down deep inside and knocked Williams out. Many years later, Shavers recalled it as one of the toughest fights of his career. Next up for Shavers was the hard-hitting Howard Smith, whom Shavers dropped in 2 rounds. On September 9th, 1977, at Madison Square Garden, Shavers would finally get the title shot he had waited for. The 54-5-1 Shavers would fight heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali, who had a 54-2 record. Shavers had once worked as Ali's sparring partner and knocked the champ down in one of their sessions. The fight was televised on NBC, and I remember watching it with my family. Shavers hurt Ali in the second round, but couldn't knock him down. Going into the 13th round, Ali was ahead on the scorecards, although some think he shouldn't have been. Shavers, whose biggest weakness as a boxer was his stamina, came alive in the 13th round and battered Ali badly in the 14th round. At the start of the 15th round, Ali looked done, as Shavers scored some heavy shots to the head. But Ali regained his strength towards the end of the round and almost knocked Shavers down. Ali won a controversial unanimous decision. Shavers' next opponent was the 4th-ranked Larry Holmes, whom he lost to by unanimous decision. The 34-year-old Shavers looked slow, tired, and old in this fight, but he won his next 5 fights, including an impressive first-round knockout over Ken Norton. Many boxing fans regard this as the best win of his career. The win over Norton earned him another title shot, this time against the newly crowned champion, Larry Holmes, whom he had lost to a year and a half earlier. Shavers knocked Holmes down in the 7th and 9th rounds, and it looked like there would be a new heavyweight champion. But Holmes came back strong and retained his title with a TKO in the 11th round. Holmes said later that the punch Shavers knocked him down with in the 7th round was the hardest he had ever been hit in his career. The fight against Holmes would be Shavers' last chance to win the title. Shavers, now 37 years old, with a detached retina, was advised to retire, but couldn't because of financial trouble. His next opponent was 28-year-old contender Bernardo Mercado. Shavers lost again on a TKO in the 7th round. Now fighting strictly for the money, Shavers won his next fight over Leroy Boone in a 10-round decision. After this fight, Shavers had surgery on the detached retina, but he didn't give himself enough time to heal before taking on Randall Tex Cobb. The two fighters slugged it out for 8 brutal rounds before Shavers ran out of gas and lost on another TKO. He won his next 7 fights against no-name opponents, except for Joe Bugner, whom he knocked out in the second round. Shavers' streak of 7 straight wins was broken by James Quick Tillis, who had fought for the WBC title 8 months earlier. After knocking Tillis down early in the fight, Shavers was outboxed for the remainder of the fight and lost by unanimous decision. Shavers knew full well that his skills had deteriorated and it was time to retire. But he had lost his house to foreclosure and had to file for bankruptcy. He had to keep fighting to get himself out of debt. Ernie won his next fight, but then lost another decision to an unknown Walter Santamore. He won his next 6 fights against relative unknowns, and then lost his next fight to George Chaplin on a disqualification. He retired, but returned 4 years later and knocked out Larry Sims in the second round. He retired again and returned 8 years later at age 51 to win an 8-round decision over Brian Morgan. 2 months later, Shavers was knocked out in the second round by Brian Yates. He retired for good with a 76-14-1 record. 6 of his 14 losses occurred when Shavers was well past his prime. In his first 47 fights, he won 44 by knockout or TKO. 23 of those were first-round knockouts. Of his 76 wins, 70 were by knockout or TKO. After retirement, Shavers made amends for making some bad decisions in his life, one of which was tax fraud. He moved to Phoenix, Arizona and became an ordained Christian minister. Later, he moved to England, where he was a pastor at a church. He also worked with a children's charity, helping families who had children with life-threatening conditions. Shavers also gave motivational speeches designed to help teenagers make the right decisions in life. Shavers was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1995. In 2001, Shavers released an autobiography titled Welcome to the Big Time. Shavers died on September 1st, 2022 at age 78. Ring Magazine voted Shavers one of the top 10 hardest punchers in boxing history. Okay, that will conclude our podcast for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and God bless.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, All you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.